Hey, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on this video. A lot of you probably already know this about me, some of you might not, but I love music. I love playing music, I love singing, I love listening to music, and for the better half of the last year, I've been working on a little project. And that project is a spreadsheet that documents and rates every album I've listened to since September of 2019. Now, the title of this video would make you think that maybe I listened to 365 albums in the span of a year, but I actually listened to 472 albums in between March of 2020 and March of 2021. So this video is pretty much just gonna be a look back at some of those albums, kinda going through what I rated them and talking music with you guys. I anticipate that this video is gonna be pretty freaking long, so if you wanted to stick around, that would be super cool. It would help me out a lot. But if you wanted to just scrub around and look at different parts of the video, feel free to do that as well. Either way, I'm super glad that you're here, and let me just get started with this. So before I jump into kind of like my favorites and then my least favorites, I wanted to just talk about kind of what made me want to start this project. The thing that really made me want to start doing this was that in September of 2019, I did a deep dive on the Beatles. I listened to their entire discography, and I was just listening to the White Album and Abbey Road back to back to back, just constantly listening to those albums. And while I was going through their discography, I wanted to make little notes of the things that I liked the most about each album and rank them and figure out which one's my favorite. Spoiler alert, Abbey Road is my favorite Beatles album, and I think it's way better than Sgt. Pepper's, and I know that's a little controversial, but that's my opinion. But anyways, after I did this deep dive on the Beatles, I just kept the spreadsheet going. So every time I listened to a new album, I added a new little area for that album. And as I slowly started to listen to more and more albums and add them to this spreadsheet, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I was adding conditional formatting, I was doing formulas, I was doing columns, I was sorting everything. It's gotten crazy. It's gotten so huge. Now on this spreadsheet, it's gotten so big, there are 526 total albums. 472 of those I listened to in the span of 1 year, and I'm kind of just going to go through and talk about my favorites. I'm going to start with my favorites because I think that that's a good idea to not start off all negative and talk about my least favorites, and then I'll go kind of down the list and talk about my least favorites more towards the end of the video. So let's start. Here's my 10 out of 10 albums that I've listened to. So of the 472 albums that I listened to in the span of 1 year, only 5 of them were 10 out of 10 albums. These 5 albums are super special to me. I do not get tired of them, and I think that they are perfect albums through and through. There is not a dud of a song on them. There's nothing that pulls it down from being a 10 out of 10. And which is saying something too, because I have a lot of 9 out of 10s and I have a lot of 9.5 out of 10s as well on this list. These albums are, in no particular order, Weezer's Blue Album, the Beatles' White Album, the Beatles' Abbey Road, Relient K Forget and Not Slow Down, and Jellyfish's Spilt Milk. And these are just the best albums I've ever heard. These are the best full packages of music that I have ever heard. Now, that's not to say necessarily that my favorite song of all time is on one of these albums, but what it does mean is that it's such a coherent package of music that is just perfect through and through. You've probably listened to the Beatles, you've probably listened to Weezer, but the other two are a little bit less well known, and I would highly recommend those albums. And that's it. That's all of my 10 out of 10s from the last year or so. And that's not to say that more 10 out of 10s won't come along, but those are the only 10 out of 10s that I have over the past year. Also, in addition to this, I did mark on my spreadsheet that Bill Wurtz, his singles that he released from 2017 to 2019, if those were all put into an album, that would be a 10 out of 10 for me as well. I love Bill Wurtz. I love all of the music that he's put out over the last few years. And so if that wasn't an album, that would count also as a 10 out of 10. Okay, moving on to the 9 out of 10s. These are albums where they are perfect through and through, except for maybe like one dud song, or maybe like one part in a song that I didn't really like. And these, there's quite a bit more. Of the 470 whatever albums I listened to in a year, 25 of them are 9 out of 10s. And these include all of these that are on the screen right here. Hello. Pause the video if you'd like to read them. But I'm going to go into depth on just a few of them because I don't want to take up this entire video talking about all of them. Now, of these 25, 5 of them are video game soundtracks, and these are the soundtracks to Halo 3 specifically, Katamari Damacy, Portal 2, Minecraft, and Stardew Valley. These are my favorite soundtracks of all time, video game soundtracks. They are S tiers, if you've seen my tier list video, and they're just fantastic. I can highly recommend all of them, even without playing the games. The music of those games are fantastic. Check them out. Some other ones that are definitely noteworthy are Ben Folds' Rockin' the Suburbs from 2001. It is a piano pop rock album that is just awesome. It's got great lyrics, it's got great pacing, there's thought-provoking songs, there's sad songs. It is awesome. It is so diverse, and every song nails what it's trying to do. I got more Beatles, ranked 9 out of 10. I got Revolver on here. I like Revolver more than Sgt. Pepper's even. Sgt. Pepper's is an 8 out of 10 on here. Oh, I've also got Paramore's self-titled album from 2013. I personally think it's the peak of Paramore, going from the kind of punk rock scene to the indie pop scene. It is like the perfect in-between of both of those. 2013's Paramore, 9 out of 10. I love that album. Something kind of unique that I have rated as a 9 out of 10 is the Vince Guaraldi Charlie Brown Christmas album. I'm the kind of guy where I will listen to a Charlie Brown Christmas in July because it's just chill. It is just the most relaxing album I've ever heard. I love that album. And the only reason that it's a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 is because there's like 1 or 2 songs in there where there's like kids singing, and I just think it's annoying personally. But otherwise, it would be a 10 out of 10. It's so good. Some other ones that I can easily recommend for anybody, you know, it's not an acquired taste or anything like that, is Damone's Out Here All Night, punk pop, punk rock. Freaking awesome. Harry Connick Jr.'s We Are in Love, so cinematic and big band and just this huge full sound, while these lyrics are just soothing and nice and lovely. Van Halen's 5150, which to me is the peak of Van Halen, and I know a lot of people might disagree with that, but that's my favorite of theirs. And the last 9 out of 10 of the ones that I'm going to at least mention is Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. So good. It is so awesome, front to back. Listening to it all the way through is a cinematic and beautiful experience, and I would highly recommend it. And other 9 out of 10s that for me are a bit more subjective, like I can definitely identify that they're just my music taste and kind of what I prefer, maybe more of an acquired taste. This is stuff like Cody Fry, Switchfoot, the Front Bottoms, Bo Burnham. It's like bands where, you know, if you're not on board with what they're doing, like their niche, you probably won't like the music that they put out, that kind of thing. So yeah, for me, those artists, freaking awesome, 9 out of 10, but for other people, maybe not so much. Okay, those are my 9 out of 10s. Moving on to 8 and 8.5, I have like 118 of these or something of the 400 whatever, so there's a lot of 8 out of 10s. Not gonna lie, most of the stuff I listened to was pretty good. I don't have a whole lot of stuff to complain about. These were great. These 8 out of 10 albums, for me at least, have less to do with being a 10 out of 10 album that has like something wrong with it, and more about being just a super awesome, solid album where maybe I am not on board with a creative decision that was made. You know what I mean? Something like that, where like for other people, there's probably a lot of these 8 out of 10s that are their 10 out of 10s. But for me, I ranked it a little lower because just some creative decision was not my type or whatever. And since I have so freaking many of these, which are all here, I mean, look at this scrolling right here. Oh my goodness, I have so many 8 out of 10s. I'm gonna just, again, list out a few of my favorites and recommend them. One of my 8 out of 10s, this makes me kind of hip, I think, right, is Taylor Swift's Folklore. Freaking love that album. Mirrorball, that's my favorite song. I love that album. It's great. It is soft. It is gentle. She's not trying to be something cringy. It's a wonderful album. I like it a lot. I also got John Mayer's Continuum, 2006, like kind of soft rock, blues rock. It is so good. Waiting for the World to Change, Gravity, Vultures, so good. Also in the 8 out of 10s, I have some of my favorite 80s albums, which include Invisible Touch by Genesis, No Jacket Required by Phil Collins, So by Peter Gabriel. Some of my favorite electronic albums are also in the 8 out of 10 section here. I've got Madeon's Good Faith, Porter Robinson's Worlds. Those are great. I freaking love the melodic sort of electronic music. I wish that more people were doing stuff like that. I cannot get enough of that genre, but I feel like when I do hear that genre, it's either like cringy or it's like mixed with another genre that I don't like. I don't know. Anyway, those albums are great. I've also got some like newer progressive rock that is really good. Owain's Yeah Whatever and Plini's Handmade Cities. Those are some really interesting albums if you're ready to listen and like really pay attention to rhythm and melodies and keys changing, and they're really cool. I also got some other good stuff in here. 21 Pilots Vessel, that's my favorite 21 Pilots album. Coldplay's X and Y album, that's my favorite Coldplay album. Mute Math's self-titled album from 2006, it is pretty good. I've also got more Weezer as 8 out of 10s, Pinkerton and the White Album. Those are my other favorite Weezer albums, so they're in there. I have a little bit of like indie pop stuff in here as well. MGMT's Little Dark Age is an 8 out of 10. I've got Valley Maybe is an 8 out of 10. I really like that album, it's really good. And lastly, just a few other random 8 out of 10s that I have, like Jack Johnson's In Between Dreams, so good. I've got Porcupine Tree's Deadwing. I've got Jimmy Eat World's Bleed American. I've got Dream Theater's Octavarium. I also have Weezer's Pacific Daydream. So much Weezer, geez. And yeah, 8 out of 10s, really good, really solid stuff. Highly recommend all of those that I at least mentioned there. Okay, next up I've got 7 out of 10s. And these are albums where, again, this is usually stuff that's recommended to me by like other people, and I like it, but it's not my favorite. It's probably their favorite and not my favorite. 7 out of 10s, I have 181 of these in this spreadsheet, and they are all right here. I'm going to let them scroll a bit and have my editor self do things with them so that you can see all of them. But some of the ones that are pretty good include Jonathan Ogden's Spring, Karakura Bonito's Bonito Generation, Daughtry's self-titled album. I got more Weezer in here. I got OK Human and Van Weezer. The soundtrack to Soul, Pixar's movie, really good, actually, surprisingly. Small Pool's Love Tap, Sure Sure's What's It Like, Foo Fighters. I've got The Color and the Shape and Nothing Left to Lose. I've got Bob Marley's Catch a Fire. I've got Chuck Berry's Berry is on Top. I've got Buddy Holly's self-titled album. I've got Joji's Nectar. I've got The Clash London Calling. I mean, just so much stuff. This is a super broad spreadsheet. I have so many albums on here that are of such vastly different genres, because this is not really me trying to listen to just my favorite stuff. It's me trying to branch out and listen to multiple things that I've never heard before, and then kind of document what I think about them. And I found that a lot of the stuff that I thought I didn't like, I actually do. It's like pretty good stuff. Like I really thought I hated indie before this, and indie stuff is totally fine. I've definitely come around to it. I thought that I really loved pop punk, but it's kind of gone down a little bit since I started this and kind of branching out and listening to more things. Speaking of which, I have Green Day's Dookie as a 7 out of 10 on here as well. Metallica's Black Album. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the 7 out of 10s that I really want to mention. And then we'll move on to 6 out of 10s. Now 6 out of 10s are interesting because a lot of these are albums where I can still see the appeal. Like I can still see how some people would, maybe this would be like their favorite album of all time, but it's definitely not for me at this point. Like even to the point where I probably wouldn't listen to it again. You know what I mean? Like 7 out of 10 albums, I would probably listen to them again. I'd put them on in the car or whatever, but these 6 out of 10s, I'm kind of getting to the point where I was like, yeah, I've listened to it and it's fine, but that's pretty much it. I really tried my best to make sure that 5 or 6 out of 10 was like the middle of the road in terms of ranking these spreadsheets, because I know a lot of people have the idea that like, oh, 7 out of 10, that's average. But for me, 7 out of 10 really is like good, and 6 out of 10 is still good, and then 5 out of 10 is like dead middle of the road, neutral. I'm not sure how I feel about this. So these 6 out of 10s, there, I can still see the appeal. I can still see stuff that I like about it, but it's getting really close to being that like, I don't know. And again, this is all just totally subjective. So some of these are probably your favorite albums of all time, but for me, I don't like them as much. And there is some, I'm looking at this sheet right now, there are some like kind of controversial picks on here. Billy Joel's An Innocent Man is a 6 out of 10. Arcade Fire's The Suburbs. Rush's 2112. Radiohead's In Rainbows, disc 1. And Radiohead's weird because there's some stuff where I listen to one Radiohead song and I like love it, and then another Radiohead song will come on and it's like maybe from the exact same album, and I'm like, what is this? This is horrible. So yeah, Radiohead, I'm like super high highs, super low lows, and In Rainbows is like that as well. It's very weird because disc 1 is pretty good, like it has some stuff on it that I enjoy, and then disc 2 I remember really not liking it. Some other controversial stuff, the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed I put as a 6 out of 10. Phineas's album, Blood Harmony, I put as a 6 out of 10. A lot of people were really raving about that one, but for me it just kind of felt unorganized and like kind of too processed. One artist that I have a lot of 6 out of 10s on is this guy named Puppet. And I looked into Puppet because I was really interested in like the Porter Robinson and Madeon kind of like electronic music, but Puppet stuff is just super like dirty. It's like not dirty as like content, but like dirty as in sound, like distorted. And I don't know, it just didn't land as well with me as the other electronic stuff that I liked. Goodness, more and more controversial stuff. The Strokes, is this it? The Strokes, dude, I listened to 3 of the Strokes albums and I realized that they're just not for me. I don't like the voice. That's pretty much it. Also in here is Avenged Sevenfold, Nightmare. I'm not really into that. The vocals on that. Throughout this whole project, I kind of was realizing that to me, vocals can make or break an album. There can be an album where instrumentally, for me, it's a 9 out of 10, but a bad vocalist will bring that thing down to a freaking 2 or 3. Like, vocals are a huge deal for me, and if I really don't like the vocalist, I really won't like the album, which is a shame because there's a lot of great musicians that work with mediocre vocalists, and also vice versa too. I also have Paul Simon's Graceland. Other than You Can Call Me Al, it was kind of just hit or miss for me. Hoyser's Wasteland Baby I have as a 6 out of 10. My girlfriend likes that album, but I don't. Porter Robinson's Nurture is my last 6 out of 10 on here, and it's my most recent one, so it's the one that I remember the most about. And I was going into that album with my expectations too high because Worlds was released in 2014 and I loved it, and I thought, okay, 7 years and growing as a musician and having as much money as he could possibly want, this has to be good. And I didn't like the direction that it went in. It uses this pitched up vocal that I just hate. I hate the pitched up vocal. I would have rated it lower, but some of the instrumentals are really awesome and I wanted to like it a lot. Anyway, Nurture is on there, 6 out of 10. So yeah, I have some 6 out of 10s. They are good still. I would still call them good albums, but they are all starting to get to the point where I am not really interested in listening to it again, aside from maybe like 1 or 2 tracks that I do really like. Which brings us to 5 out of 10, which I tried to keep as middle of the road as I possibly could, and I'm going to name some of these off, and I'd really like you to leave a comment if you've listened to it before and tell me why you either really liked it or really didn't. 5 out of 10 is really interesting for me because these are albums where I could really take it or leave it. They're albums where I listened to it and I finished listening to it and I was like, I could have been doing something else, or it wasn't necessarily like a bad experience, but I just got done with it and I was like, okay, I could have not listened to that and my day would have been the exact same. So these 5 out of 10s are going to be really interesting because some of these I think are probably some people's favorite albums ever, but for me, it felt like almost like a waste of time. So here we go. These are getting kind of controversial because some of this stuff is really mainstream. So tell me what you think. First and most controversial, I have it as a 5.5 out of 10 because it's just barely positive, is Billie Eilish's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And for me, this is an album where it is so high highs and so low lows that I just can't listen to it. I'm pretty sure in my spreadsheet, I have like a 2-page essay written about why I feel the way I do about this album specifically. It does some things with the production that are so different and so odd that I don't like, that are kind of experimental. It does some things with songwriting stuff that I don't like. It does some things with lyrics that I don't like. But then it does some stuff with like her vocals and again, stuff with production that is experimental that I love. And I would love to see that stuff in more pop music, and her potential as a vocalist is incredible. So there's so much that goes into Billie Eilish's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? That makes it a 5 out of 10 for me. That makes it just middle of the road. But if you ask me about different tracks in it, I will give you a completely different answer. Because like some of the tracks, I really don't like them at all. They are like 1 out of 10s. And some of them for me are like 10 out of 10 tracks. Listen Before I Go, I Love You. I love those songs. Those are great. I wish the whole album was stuff like that. So anyway, Billie Eilish, that's really controversial, 5 out of 10 rating for me, I think. And I'm going to keep it coming. I got more kind of controversial pop music, mainstream stuff that are 5 out of 10s. The Lumineers' Cleopatra, didn't like it. Bland, indie, folk, processed. It's not indie, but it kind of claims it is. Bon Iver's I album. That one starts off like bizarre with like a super weird intro and then kind of picks up and gets some really interesting experimental indie stuff going on, and then it falls off again for me. Surf John Stevens, The Age of Ads, Hippocampus's Bambi album. There's like one song on that. Oh, it's Bambi. It's the title track that I like a lot. And Bubbles is okay as well. Radiohead's In Rainbows Disc 2. Yeah, there it is. That's the 5 out of 10. Surfaces, Where the Light Is. Passion Pit's Chunk of Change. I don't like that guy's vocals very much. Frank Ocean's Blonde album is a 5 out of 10 for me. I just don't, I'm not, that's not for me, I think. I can barely see the appeal, but it's not for me. It's not lower than a 5 out of 10, but goodness, it's not for me. The 1975 Notes on a Conditional Form. Some people freaking loved that album. Goodness, I was seeing some really positive stuff about how diverse that album is. But for me, it felt like a collection of a bunch of singles that were trying to just spread out their market share as much as they could, like get more listeners in. I don't know. It was weird. I'm not a huge fan of that one. Tame Impala's Currents I have as a 5 out of 10. I had it as a 6 out of 10, and then I listened to it again because I was like, 6 out of 10, that's kind of low. I feel like Tame Impala is pretty good. And then I listened to it again and I was like, yeah, no, I don't like this. And I ranked it even lower. So yeah, Currents for me is a 5 out of 10. I have a friend who he listens to this album probably every day. And I think I talked to him recently and he said that he's probably listened to it over like 400 times. And he loves it. And it's not for me. I don't get the appeal. I don't like the vocalist. So yeah, those are my 5 out of 10s. Again, pretty like, controversial stuff. And I can definitely understand that it's just the kind of stuff where it's just not for me. So yeah, 5 out of 10s. Tell me what you think. I got a lot in there. Here's the full list right here. And yeah. There they are. So yeah, let me know. Tell me what you think. I'm interested. Okay, 4 out of 10s. These are albums where I don't like them, but just barely. It's like a negative listening experience, but it's like almost passable and almost like, okay, yeah, that was fine. But these are ones where I'm like listening to it. Maybe I skipped a track or two. And yeah, this includes Kai Dreams, Nice Colors, Porter Robinson's Spitfire EP, Modest Mouse, The Lonesome Crowded West, Shoo Shoo, Forget, My War by Black Flag, which was it's a mess of an album, but it's kind of fun also at the same time. Snail's House, Imaginarium. I wanted to like that album because it's like electronic, but I just didn't end up liking it. Superorganism's self-titled album, which a lot of people were really raving about for how like experimental and artsy it was. It was like art pop, but I just wasn't on board. Maybe I'm too small brain. I don't know. I'm too closed-minded. But yeah, that one was pretty low. 3 out of 10s start to get worse, and this is stuff where I'm like outspoken about how I don't like it. One of the biggest things on here that a lot of people think is the greatest album of all time is the Velvet Underground, the Banana album. It's proto-punk. There's nothing else to say other than an effort was made to do something new. And you know what? Some people think that it paid off. Others, like myself, don't necessarily think it did. This one would be lower, honestly, even, but it's at a 3 out of 10 because I can understand that it's important because it's culturally significant and because it was helping push music in a direction that it hadn't been pushed before. So while I personally hate how it sounds, I can understand that it was important to music as a whole. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's anywhere close to as important as other 1960s bands were, namely the Beatles and maybe like some of the early The Who stuff. But I can still understand how some people really think it's really important. So that's why it's a 3 out of 10 instead of like a 1 out of 10. I've also got the Pixies' Surfer Rosa album as a 3 out of 10, and it's weird because if it came out 10 years earlier, I think I could understand that like, oh, this is treading new ground and this is doing something that has never been done before. But it came out in 1988 and it sounds bad for that time. So yeah, not a huge fan of that one. I've also got Deftones and Def Haven on here. Deftones' White Pony and Def Haven's Sunbather. Not fans of those albums. And then I go even lower. I have 2 out of 10s. Bob Dylan is a 2 out of 10 for me. I cannot stand Bob Dylan's voice. Oh my gosh. It is a subjective thing. I understand that he is a poet and has some great lyrics, but goodness, I cannot stand the man's voice, and the flow of the songs makes me want to die. I just hate it. FKA Twigs, I listened to that album because PewDiePie was listening to it, and I was like, oh, what kind of music is PewDiePie into? And then I realized that we are into very different kind of music. Also a 2 out of 10, I have The Score, the Atlas album from 2017. It's the most corporate thing I've ever heard. Literally sounds like an algorithm tried to make songs that will become popular and then just spit them into a MP3 and said, here you go. And then lastly, 1 out of 10s. These are like the worst things I've ever heard. This is gonna be The Smiths' self-titled album. Not a fan. I listened to the album twice. I really tried to give it a shot. I don't like it. Church's Love is Dead, 2018. It's like an electronic pop album. I had heard one song from Church's that I really liked, so I took a chance on the whole album, and I hated it. It was not good at all. Clearance Clarity's Know Now has a really cool intro that I thought I liked, so I listened to the whole album, and then it ended up tanking. It was horrible. Oh my gosh. And then the worst thing that I've ever heard is the Armin van Buuren remix of Van Halen's Jump. It's a single, it's not an album, but it's a 0 out of 10 because I don't think it should exist. It's disrespectful. It is flat out horrible, and I don't like it. Listen to it. Actually go and listen to it. The Armin van Buuren Van Halen remix. It's on their Spotify page. It's on Van Halen's Spotify page. It's cringy. I hate it. It is so horrible. And that concludes my freaking spreadsheet. Goodness gracious. Maybe I should have started with the 0 out of 10s and worked my way up to 10 so that I'm less negative. That's pretty much all I got. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of my channel. I hope you smash like, subscribe, bell icon, all that crap. Yeah, I'll see you hopefully very soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.